If you're having any difficulties with your control settings or sensitivity in Call of Duty Mobile, then this video is for you. I'm ExxotikGaming and welcome back to another Call of Duty Mobile video on the channel. Today we're going to go over everything you could possibly need to know about your sensitivity settings, your control settings, and every other basic setting for Call of Duty Mobile that is going to help you play to the absolute best of your ability in the very near future. If you guys could just take a second to leave a like down below, that would be greatly appreciated. This video did take a lot of time to make, and all I ask in return is if this video did help you to leave a like down below. Subscribe to my channel for tons more Call of Duty Mobile tips and tricks and random gameplays, just like this, or this, or this. Turn on post notifications because there's a very special video coming out on January 4th, 6 p.m. Eastern Time that you're not going to want to miss. And without further ado, let's begin. Okay guys, starting things off, let's jump into the settings section. Now, I need to be very clear here. Depending on the type of device you play on and the size of that device's screen, your sensitivity and your controls will vary slightly. It's impossible for someone who plays on the iPad Pro to have the exact same settings and sensitivity as someone who plays on a much smaller device, like a regular iPhone, for example. Just keep this in mind, and you may need to adjust some of the stuff I say to fit your device specifically. And that's okay, because every device is a little bit different. So, let's begin with your basic settings, multiplayer first. Going down the list here, aim assist is entirely up to you. I know that's a little bit controversial, but it's one of the few settings that can work great turned on or turned off. I've done equally well either way. Fast throw grenade, on the other hand, I would recommend turning that off. You want to be able to control how long before you throw your grenade, as you want to time it so it explodes the second it hits the ground sometimes. Grenades are very tactical, and you'll learn how to do that over time. Quick run from prone, definitely turn that on. It makes your player move quicker. Joystick auto sprint is super key, as you want to be able to just use one tap to get from a walking speed to a sprint. Using the alternative sprint button gives a split-second delay, and you might die because of it. I personally would always recommend keeping on the fixed R-Fire button, and I personally do not use the fixed joystick. It's not that I like it any better, I just never bothered to change it a long time ago, and I've gotten used to it, and I actually think it works great. Sometimes you have to adjust your hand, and you don't want to have to find where the joystick is when you're ready to continue playing. Without a fixed joystick, you can literally just tap anywhere on the left-hand side of your screen, and you're ready to go. Fixed virtual joystick, turn that off, and right fire button for fixed perspective, turn that off as well. Continuing on, I always recommend tap to aim down sights, or ADS, whatever you like to call it. Never use the other settings because they're super inconvenient, and tap to ADS is the most regular setup for firing that you're most used to for mobile games. The only weapon that you might not want to tap to aim down sight with is a sniper rifle, because the second that crosshair is on the enemy, you're ready to fire. So, it's entirely up to you. Test it out, see which one you prefer, but I always would recommend tap to aim down sights. Even if you don't use it too much, I'd recommend displaying the left fire button. It's always good to have, especially in Battle Royale if you're sniping from a high point or somewhere. And you definitely should press tap crouch while sprinting for your slide settings, because it just works better that way. I would not check always sprint. Sometimes it's better to walk, sometimes it's better to run. You want to be able to have the option to choose one or the other. And of course, there you can see my sprint sensitivity. I personally turn gyroscope off. I never use gyroscope, and I don't plan to use it in the future. There are a lot of people who like to use it, and I can't simply say it's bad because I've never used it before. So test it out, and see for yourself whether or not you like it. I change the camera field of view in first person between 60 and 65. That's just about the perfect sweet spot for me. And do not check reset weapon aim on. Alright, now Battle Royale basic settings. Auto loot and auto open doors, of course, turn those on. It makes your gameplay experience that much smoother. You don't want to have to press a separate button on your screen when you want to open up a door or loot something off the ground. And for all the other settings in Battle Royale, it's the same as for multiplayer. Super important tip that I think you all should follow, even if you're a pro. If there are a couple of things you want to change from what I am showing in this video, because perhaps you like gyroscope, or perhaps you like to have a lower sensitivity than me, make sure to do it for all of the different game mode settings. You don't want to have, like, for example, a 40 sensitivity in multiplayer, and then for the same type of scope, an 80 sensitivity in Battle Royale. You will not be able to get used to it, and that's never a good thing. I guess now is as good of a time as ever to explain how the settings in Zombies will, of course, yes, be the same as the other game modes. And hey, let's get to my actual controls before we move on to sensitivity and graphics, shall we? If we head over to our controls, first things first, please always choose Advanced Mode. This is for all game modes, and just like I mentioned earlier, all game modes have the same control layouts. You want to be able to actually decide when you want to fire when you have the Advanced Mode, and that is hugely important in this game. Also, make sure hipfire is checked. This way you don't have that split-second delay every time you want to fire at someone when they run up behind you or they scare you from behind a wall. But here are my controls. Now you might notice something interesting. I like to play with my thumbs. I don't like playing with the claw method. And guess what? That's perfectly fine. Hear me loud and clear. There are some players who really prefer the claw method, where you use more fingers on your screen. And then there are other players like me who like to use their thumbs, especially when they have a small screen to begin with, like I do. Ever since the beginning, I've always liked to use my thumbs in video games, and that will never change. Another thing that I would highly recommend is lowering the transparency of as many buttons as you're comfortable with, and that way your screen is less obstructed with all of these buttons that are in the way. The less you see your buttons, the more you're able to concentrate on your overall surroundings, and you'll perform that much better. And probably the most important control setting of them all, make sure to place your knife button directly over the firing button. This is so key because you never have to move your finger to another place on your screen if the enemy gets too close. You can keep spamming that firing button, the same exact button as before, and when the enemy gets within knifing range, whereas they will have to take a millisecond or a few to move their finger to a different place on the screen, you don't have to. And because you're faster at knifing them, you'll probably end up getting the kill before they do. Graphics and frame rate is important to talk about as well. If you lag a lot in Call of Duty Mobile, I will always say your frame rate is more important than your graphics. A person who plays with high graphics and only 20 frames per second will not do as well as someone who plays with low graphics and gets 40 frames per second. Simple as that. And if you're actually someone who has a lot of issues with lag, make sure to turn on my video notifications, so on January 4th at 6 p.m. East Coast time, you're notified by my next Call of Duty video, where I go in depth with every possible tip and trick on how to remove lag in this game. Your other graphics settings are really up to you if you want a nicer looking experience or not. One thing I will say is if you turn a lot of these settings off, there are less effects and shadows and other distracting stuff in your way. So you can probably focus more on the enemies rather than the scenery, and you might play a little bit better. I like realistic graphics, but this setting is entirely, honestly, up to you. And I guess we should probably switch over to our sensitivity settings now. If you have a phone or tablet or whatever you play Call of Duty on, I want you to join into a match and then place your thumb down where it naturally lies on the right-hand side of your screen. Then, I want you to drag your thumb in this direction and then back over to this direction. If you've done this the right way, you should be able to do a 180-degree turn to the left and then from that middle point to the right, being able to complete a full 360-degree turn just by one single swipe of your thumb. You really don't want to be in a situation like this where you have to swipe a ton of times just to turn your character around. That's never good, and you'll die before you even see the enemy behind you. Be nimble. Be able to do a 360 degree spin just by one simple press of your screen, and that will make you 1,000 times better. So for me, on all 3 game modes, these are what my sensitivity settings are like. Rotation mode should be at fixed speed, and this is because that is what you'll be most familiar with when playing any first or third person shooter, with a possible exception of Fortnite Mobile if you have played that one in the past. With fixed speed, no matter how fast or how slow you swipe your finger on the right side of your screen, it will stay true to the speed that you moved your finger. This means that if you swipe slow, your character turns slow, but it doesn't change in speed because you are going slow. And that also means if you turn super fast, it's going to stay at the exact same speed that you swipe your fingers. Nothing more, nothing less. Now with speed acceleration, that's where things get iffy. If you swipe super quickly, your game will overcompensate and make your player turn even faster than you originally swiped, and that doesn't always stay completely reliable. So I like fixed speed, not speed or distance acceleration. Now my sensitivity will be different from yours because every single device that you play with will need different sensitivity values. I have 8 different phones that I've gotten over the years from making video reviews and such, and I can confidently say that my Asus ROG Phone 2 does not have the same sensitivity as my iPhone or my Nubia Red Magic 3S, for example. However, I can say that you will want to have your firing sensitivity to get less sensitive as you increase in your scope size. Your standard sensitivity will be at its own thing, but your aim down sight sensitivity will generally be the highest sensitivity you have on. Tactic scope will be at a lower sensitivity, sniper scope will be a little bit lower than that, and so on and so forth. This is the same both with your camera sensitivity and your firing sensitivity, and the same applies to both Battle Royale and Zombies as well. As you can see from the optics down to the sniper scope, the sensitivity decreases with both camera and firing sensitivity, and just the third person and first person settings are a little bit different. I always like to feel light-footed and nimble when I play this game, and that's why my sensitivity settings are always higher than the default settings. You might be a little bit different. Again, test it out because your device will be a little bit different. And lastly, for your free view sensitivity, this is going to be the same across the board. It's that little button right up here on your screen. It should be kicked up way high, like 115 to 130 or maybe even higher. You want to be able to barely move your finger around the screen because it is usually at a pretty inconvenient spot, and then just by barely moving it at all, you're able to see plenty enough around you. Now for Battle Royale settings, and wrapping this video up, I've always liked using layout A for driving vehicles. Vehicle camera should be set at semi-follow, and whether you want to show the vehicle HP is entirely up to you. And very last, since we're basically finished with this video, please, for the sanity of all that are watching and will play with you in the future, when you're in-game, turn your microphone off unless you actually want to talk with your teammates. We don't want to hear your music in the background or anything else, okay? Unless you're in a quiet room and your voice won't be a distraction to your teammates, keep your mic off and you should be good. Everything else, from your quick commands to your languages to all other audio settings that you can have in this game, are entirely up to you. No matter what you choose really won't affect your gameplay, so we're not going to worry about that. I know it was sort of an abrupt end, but we're done. There are no other settings to talk about that actually will make a difference with your gameplay experience. Guys, if you have any issues with lag in Call of Duty Mobile at all, I have a massive 25-minute long video coming your way in just a few days on January 4th at 6 p.m. New York time, where I will be explaining literally everything you could possibly do to make your device run the game way better, even budget devices that might cost less than $200. It includes special apps for both iOS and Android you can download to boost performance, as well as hooking your phone up to a computer and actually manually lowering the game resolution so it requires less memory to run. I'm talking about like extra low graphics quality so you can actually play the game well. Super in-depth stuff, and I guarantee it'll help you. So subscribe to the channel and turn on post notifications so you don't miss it. I mean, who doesn't want to get 60 FPS in the game? I sure do, and I think everyone else who's watching this does as well. So yeah, stay tuned. Anyways, regarding the video, I hope you found everything I said useful, and please leave a like if you did and you learned something new. It takes just 1 second, but it helps out oh so much. Thank you so much for staying until the end, and that's it. I'll see you all later.